I also want to thank everybody for coming out on Sunday night to this event. Some of you have not been to this before. It's a group that I started about 2 years ago with like 12 people around my dining room table, and with the idea that we would provide community and also education for people who are interested in a whole foods, plant-based diet to improve health. It's not really a vegan group, although I'm sure a lot of us are vegan also as far as care for the animals and climate. But this is primarily through healing through food, medicine by way of food. And over the last couple years, we've grown. I'm glad to see everybody here. We've got some people who have been speakers before here. Dr. Betsy Larder in back was a speaker. Dr. Amy Meckley here was also a speaker for us. And Rich was one of the athletes who spoke at our last monthly meeting. We also have great volunteers, and I want to thank them very much. Glory Hodge over here. I got the Gainers over at the welcome table. I've got Nina, who helped with cooking classes, Chris Christensen, who I'm going to mention too. So again, if I didn't say your name, thank you also. And this group really runs on volunteers, especially as we're getting larger. And if you'll notice, I did leave a volunteer sheet out at the table. And going forward into 2020, I really want to be able for us to offer a lot more classes, whether it's intro to plant-based eating for people or an intro to cooking plant-based. I want to keep up the larger meetings and have some more guest speakers, but I'd also like to do those smaller ones. And with anything, it just takes a lot of volunteers. One of my big things, if any of you are good with social media, that would be a huge help too. So I'm just putting it out there, and you'll see it on the Facebook page. But one thing is also getting emails out, because not everybody's on Facebook. One thing I want to mention about Chris, can you stand, Chris Christensen? Chris has taken on a role that is really of a benefit with Plant Pure Nation of identifying restaurants that offer, I believe, at least one or two oil-free plant-based meals. And on our Facebook page, she just posted Allen's on Columbia Parkway just got that certification from Plant Pure Nation. And we're also Chris is kind of coordinating that. So if you have a restaurant that you think you'd like to approach or talk to about that, she has the information, the sheets that the restaurant would send in to Plant Pure, and she can give them information and also you information. And if you tell her what restaurants you're working on, that way we're not duplicating efforts. That's the other thing we want to avoid also. So anyway, talk to Chris if you know of any restaurants. The other thing, I'm really excited to have, Paul Chatlin here. Paul is going to tell his story about how he became plant-based, and it's a fascinating story. It led him not only to better health, but to create a community that just keeps expanding. That's kind of where I got the idea for this group. Somehow, several years ago, I came across an article about PBNSG, Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group out of Detroit. And I saw that they had speakers, and I drove up to Detroit to hear, I think Dr. Esselstyn might have been one of the first ones, or someone that I went up to hear. And here, this school auditorium with like 300-400 people, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like why can't we do this in Cincinnati? Why can't we have that type of support? So, and again, I think everybody who's on a plant-based journey, one of the big things is having community to work with. And that's what I think all of us here, all the volunteers, everybody who's coming to the meetings, that's all what we're really striving for, is providing support for each other. And also helping educate and provide support for people who are starting on this journey. So anyway, it was interesting. I put on Facebook, there was an article this week, and this was sad. This really bothered me this week. Wall Street Journal, I forget if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, but there was the title was Deaths from Heart Failure Are Surging as Population Ages and the Health of Younger Generation Worsens. And just a couple statistics from that. The death rate rose 20.7% from heart disease between 2011 and 2017. High rates, and it's due to high rates of obesity and diabetes in all ages. All of those increased. While most deaths were in older Americans, the big thing this article pointed out was that the heart disease is rising in under 65. So, I mean, it's something that I know I feel very passionately about, and I know Paul does, and I think a lot of you do too. So, without further ado, Paul, would you like to come up? We'll start with Paul talking, and when Paul's done, we're going to have a Q&A with Paul and also with Dr. Betsy Larder, and then we'll do a wrap-up. So here you go. Thanks, Paul.
Well, hello, everybody. How are you? Good. All right, good. So here, I'll share a little bit about what I'm here for. First of all, thank you for inviting me, Julie. I really appreciate it. It was a nice drive today, and you know, I'm a big Detroit Lions fan, so I'm going to miss their entire game. You guys could relate to that, can't you? All right. So I want to share my story, and then I'm going to kind of bring the organization into play toward the end. You know, it's interesting. I've been whole food, plant-based, perfect, I call it, for 7 years, and you know, it's like. I will share a story and you'll say, oh my goodness, it's a really good story. It really is a good story. It's a bunch of miracles. But over the years, I've heard so many stories, and now my story is just one of many good stories. But what's a little different is I wanted to give something back. And I will not tell my story again anywhere unless I could bring in what the organization has meant to me, what has meant to Michigan, and what I'm hoping it's going to mean to all of you here. So today you get to hear the kind of the longer version, and at the end I'm going to hang out with my friend Betsy and ask any question, because I think we could answer most of them. All right, so again, thank you for having me. So my story really starts when I was very young. It was my dad and his 3 brothers. That was my family. And it was between the ages of 10 and about 13, all of my dad and his brothers all needed bypass surgery. Now, what's sad about it was 2 died on the table. One of them was never the same mentally. And my father, I saw him cry at the age of 10 or 11 or 12 for 3-4 days straight. He lived another 15, 20 years, but the family was never the same after. Now I'm going to fast forward. I turned 50 years old. I had the same doctor for 30 years. And I just said to him, whatever you do, keep me alive. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Just keep me healthy. Now, back at 50 years old, which is only 10, 11 years ago, I weighed 225 pounds. Okay? I was a power lifter. I was always into sports. I played baseball at Michigan State. I was always playing tennis, and I was a very active person. It's kind of funny when you think you're really something special, then you go see what the next level is, and then you realize, like for me, I had to go back to school, get serious. I wasn't going to be a pro baseball player, but at 50 years old, my doctor says to me, listen, your cholesterol now is at 300. And it was at a high point of 347. So he finally said, now it's time for us to put you on some type of statin. So I was on Zocor, was the first one. Now, when you think back 11 years ago, they didn't have 10 or 12 different statins to choose from. They had 1 or 2 or 3. So you had Zocor, Lipitor, and Pravastatin. Those were the statins 11 years ago. Unfortunately, after being on Zocor for about a month, I got the side effects. The side effects were I literally could not walk. I woke up and I was like, I can't move. I was like just like this. So he said, well, you're getting the side effects, high muscle enzymes. I want you to get off it. 2 days later, I was okay. So he put me on Lipitor. 7 months later, got the side effects. Again, had to get off it. Now he put me on something called pravastatin. I was on the most I could take, 80 milligrams of it every day. It allowed me to take my 347 number down to 280, not any lower. And he was okay with that until I turned 55. And during that time, his suggestions were, not necessarily that it was his fault, but go from whole milk down to 1%. Try to eat more egg whites. Eat more fish. You know, the basic information that was being told back 11 years ago. So now I'm 55 years old, and I wake up one day and literally, you know, as they describe it, an elephant on your chest. So I wake up one day and I just am in so much pain, but I just lay there, and after a little bit it goes away, and I'm going to conduct my day. And this went on every morning and every night for 3 months. I was never the brightest. I'm a grinder, okay? I'm a hard worker, but I'm not, you know, I just said, well, I didn't have a lot of the internet touches, so I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that if I just laid there after the pain hit me, it would go away. I'd conduct my day. Well, 3 months into it, I'm at a meeting, I leave the meeting, and I literally could not take 7 steps without stopping. And it took me a long, long time to get to my car. And I realized right then I needed to go see my doctor. Now, I will say this, I'm in love with my wife, and she didn't have a clue. I didn't want to worry her. Not the smartest thing for a guy who's in love with his wife. I go to my doctor, and he hears a heart murmur he had never heard before. He immediately gets me over to a cardiologist, and they do all the tests up to a heart biopsy and a heart catheter. And the only way to really see where you are is to do a biopsy and a heart catheter. And he didn't know, like the cardiologist, you know, they'll always give their opinion. So, Doc, what do you think I have? Well, Paul, based on the tests that you've done, you either need a heart transplant or bypass surgery, but we'll know after we do the heart catheter. So I'm like, oh my God, this is serious stuff. So on the way home, I stopped at my wife's office, and I explained, I said, come on in the conference room, I need to talk to you. After she kind of thunked me in the head for not telling her, I'm being kind, she was crying, okay? Her boss walks in and says, what's going on? So I explained what was going on. Well, it turned out, and this is the first miracle I got, was 2 years prior, he had a lung transplant at the Cleveland Clinic. Now, without doing terrible judgment, he was in his 70s, so clearly there were probably other people who were on the list, but he gave an enormous donation to the clinic, saved a lot of people. I feel sorry for the person who he went ahead of. It's real world stuff. But he made a call, and he got me an appointment the day before I was going to go to my local hospital's appointment for the heart catheter and the heart biopsy. So we drove to the Cleveland Clinic, never been there before. They assigned me a doctor. I had never met him before, and they have hundreds and hundreds of cardiologists. It's a heart hospital. So not only was I able to get in within about a 2-week period, which is unheard of, usually it would take 6 months to a year to get in, but then they assigned me to Dr. Hanna. Again, never met him before. So I wait all day. I'm there early in the morning. He had a bunch of emergencies. At about 7:30, they said, okay, come on in. We're going to get you the heart catheter first. Now, I will say that by being here today, you get to hear me without any reservation, share some personal stuff. So as a human being, as a man or whatever, they prep you for bypass surgery. And I want to tell you, I lost my humility that day. Not my virginity, but my humility. Within 3-4 minutes, I had 4 people shave me top to bottom. I'm on a Demerol drip. You can imagine, I'm sitting there. I'm just laughing because I'm looking at myself like a little boy. It's just an amazing moment. So now I get wheeled in, and I hear my doctor going, yes, yes. Now, I'm in twilight, so I'm not knocked out, but I can't really make out what he's doing. And I go, Dr. Hanna, why were you going, yes, yes, yes? You don't need a heart transplant, but you do need immediate bypass surgery. You see, what we found out was I had an enlarged heart, I had leaky valves, I had scarsidosis of the right side of my heart, I had a left bundle block. I had a heart murmur. I was and I had a 100% block of my right artery. Thank goodness, if I showed you a picture of the right artery, what you'd see is a huge bunch of collateral arteries right around it. It's amazing. It looked like a spider's nest, and it was my body's way of saying, I want you to live. Amazing. So here I am, and he's like, okay, you need bypass surgery. I'm all prepped up. I'm being wheeled in. Now I'm right at the door, and he says the most beautiful thing. He says, I've only offered this to one other person in 20 years, but would you consider changing what you eat, and maybe you don't need the surgery? Yes. I was thinking of my dad, my family. I've got 3 sons, and I'm great. I'm a grinder. Remember I told you? I'm a grinder. So I knew I could get through it, whatever it was. Now, I had no idea what I was about to do. I never heard of plant-based nutrition. I never met my doctor. He gets on the phone. It's 9:30 at night, and he dials this number. He says, hey, Essie, I want you to talk to somebody. Well, who is Essie? Well, it's Caldwell Esselstyn. Turns out my doctor, who I never met, who I was assigned to, could have been anybody, his mentor in medical school was Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. So here I am at a place I've never been with a cardiologist I never knew, and I'm talking to this guy I'd never heard of, and he's like, just go on home and I'll call you in the morning. All right. So when I did the heart catheter, by the way, they did it through my wrist, 4-hour recovery. So it wasn't through my groin. It was interesting. It wasn't painful. Just FYI for anybody who wants to know. But now it's like 12 at night. I have to drive 3.5 hours home because he's going to call me at 8 in the morning. Oh yeah, and sure enough, he called right at 8, and sure enough, I got home at 4:30, and I listened to him, and that was the last time I consumed any meat, dairy, or oil. But it was just a start. You see, I had an enlarged heart, leaky valves. I had to stop. So I was on bed rest for 4 months. Now, I admit to everybody, I probably have a combination of hyperactivity and OCD. Remember, grinder, okay? Work hard. And me sleeping 16-hour days for the first 4 months was rough. And I kept saying to myself, okay, first, I don't know how to cook this food. Okay, and I used to laugh saying, oh, it's a diet change. No, it's a lifestyle change. Let's make it real clear. Okay, because really I was a person who would go out to eat all the time. I was that guy who would order 4 Coca-Colas, or the person who made the bread with the oil and the spices. Oh, I love and I hate you, because it was like, bring me all the oil, bring me all the bread and the spices. And I just would work out like crazy, but you can't outwork a bad diet, and I was certainly on a bad diet. Genes play a part, but not as big as people think. So I needed 4 months of bed rest, but I needed to learn how to cook this food. So I went to the Esselstyn cooking class. It was a little bit pricey, my humble opinion, and I've told them that. But I took the receipt, I put it into Blue Cross Blue Shield, denied. And I'm like, okay, that's my fight, because when I was on that gurney being wheeled in, I said, and everyone's had this happen, and I've had it happen many times, where I sit there and say, okay, Lord, you get me out of this trouble, I owe you one. I've done that quite a few times. And I said, okay, well, my give back is going to be, I'm going to work with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm going to get a pay code, so anybody who wants to learn how to cook plant-based will learn. And think about it from the insurance standpoint, a bypass surgery, $124,000 or $5,000, and the cooking class was, let's say, under $1,000. So a lot of people are going to save a lot of money, especially the company. Why would they deny me? I went to the 8th level. They told me the reason why I was denied is I have to work with the Michigan legislature to get a pay code assigned. That was not going to happen for me, because I just knew that it would take the rest of my life to make a change, especially in Michigan being such a dairy state. Past life, little side note, now if you don't mind, you'll keep up with me, I'm going to be random. My first job out of college, I worked for Land O'Lakes Butter Company in Wisconsin, and every Friday I'd bring a 6 or 5 pound block of cheese home. Sharp cheddar was my favorite, and it was gone by Sunday. What's the problem with that? All right. Now, that would go on for a year, and it was always fun for me because I was introducing Land O'Lakes margarine in dairy country. Oh, my goodness. Then I left Land O'Lakes, and I got a job as a regional director for Stouffer Food Company. Cream chip beef, yeah, all their pizzas. I never bought dinners. I just would bring all their food home. That was my life, so I just find that kind of funny that no wonder why it turned out the way it turned out. So I said to myself, okay, I'm 4 months, I'm bedridden, and there was a moment where I was tragically all alone. I'm a people person, and I was around nobody. I was sleeping, I was just cooking. This went on every day. I said, maybe I should have had the bypass. It would have made my life a lot easier, But then I kept reminding myself of my dad, my family that was destroyed, the sons that I love. And I knew I had to stop it. I knew this had to stop within our family because I thought it was genetic, but it's really just lifestyle choices for the most part. So I said, okay, what I'll do is I'll put an ad in the paper and I'll just invite anybody in my neighborhood to come over to my house who's got heart disease, because the organization really started as a heart disease organization. And within 2 days, I had 20 people at my house. I said, oh, I'm on to something. So I did it again. Within 2-3 days, another 20 people. I said, okay, that's going to be my give back, but I'm not a doctor. And they were asking questions, and while I spend a lot of time doing nutritional research so I could talk intelligently, not all the time, but I try, I'm not a doctor. I don't want to give medical advice. So I called the local hospitals. I said, give me the name of 3 holistic cardiologists. They gave me 3 names. One was repeated. It was Dr. Joel Kahn. Has anybody heard of Dr. Joel Kahn? Okay. Very good man, very outspoken. He and I don't always agree. We don't have to. What we agree on are the important things, which is people should know more about the benefits of whole food plant-based. And I asked him if he would join me, be our medical director, and we would start spreading the word. So we got in at Beaumont Hospital for our first big meeting. We had 123 people. And usually, it would drop off because I heard that you had about 80 people last month here. So you tell those other 30 that didn't show up, they missed me. And so the next meeting, we had 147. So it was starting to grow. 2 days before our third meeting, Beaumont kicks us out. Now, was it because of standard American diet and we were plant-based? Maybe. Was it because a week earlier, Joel Kahn was taking pictures of what they were serving at the cafeteria and posting it? Probably. Didn't matter. I had 143 people. I had to call and find a place. I was thankful because the Birmingham school system opened up their doors, and we've had our meetings for the last 6 years. As an organization, we just passed 6,800 members. We've got 42 small groups around the state and outside, a little bit in Ontario, Ohio, Illinois. We've got some things coming up this year. So this year, we have created the first ever whole food plant-based no oil type of like heart disease cookbook. We have 26 of our chefs have contributed. It's going to be 150 pages. It'll be out first quarter of this coming year. We're going to have a membership, and we're going to take this model nationally, and we're going to ask all you to come with us. All right? Would you come with me? Mm-hmm. I hope so. Okay. My point here is that our goal has been simply the same since day one, which is I just want people, personally, I just want people to know about it. What they choose to do, it's really up to them. We're all adults for the most part, and we make our own decisions. I can't tell you how many times in 6 years I've heard, oh, I can't give, and then fill in the blank. I can't give meat up. I can't give this up. I can't do it. I had the privilege of spending the last 4 or 5 years chasing some pretty big dreams with the hope if any of the dreams came true, the world would know. This past year, I got to go to all the assembly plants at General Motors. They contacted me for the second time in 3 years because they spent $1.5 billion in sick care. Not health care, sick care. And it's only getting worse. So, of course, I said, well, I'll do all these things. I'll go to your plants. But at the end, you need to hire us and let us help you. I formed a great group of Dr. Neil Bernard, Dr. Scott Stoll, Dr. Joel Furman. We're all going to work together. But at the end, the board of directors at GM just couldn't pull the trigger after I spent all that time. But it taught me a lot of good lessons. One thing that I realized is when I was speaking to the assembly workers in urban and rural areas, I realized that we're really solid in the 55-year-old white crowd. Don't take this the wrong way, but that's where our strength is. Why? Because it's more affluent, because people have a little more money. But what I was talking to in the urban rural areas were people who were the majority, and they didn't have a clue about the benefits of whole food plant-based. So I realized more and more that that is the mission that I was supposed to be on, is just to let people know about it. Unfortunately, it usually takes a lot of money to have that spread. But I'm a dreamer, so it will happen. It really will happen. And as an organization, I'm very pleased of what we've been able to accomplish. And really, that's kind of the story of PBNSG. This coming year, we're going to have the who's who of speakers. You're all welcome to come up. I came to see you, all right? And we're going to have Dr. Michael Greger. Okay, he'll be introducing his new How Not to Diet book in January. Team Shirzai, dementia, Alzheimer experts. Milton Mills will be here. We're going to have Dr. Neil Bernard will be coming in March. He's got a brand new book that he'll be presenting. We're going to have Joel Kahn along with Mahesh Shah. Mahesh Shah you might not know, but he's a very big cardiologist in England. Pam Popper's going to be talking along with Andrew Spud Taylor, one of my personal heroes, who gave up all the meat and everything and just ate potatoes for a year. Very healthy guy, okay? And then we're going to end it with Joel Furman. So we've got a lot of great activities next year. As an organization, we have over 20 culinary classes, and we're going to be live streaming them, hopefully to you, coming up next year sometime. And we have another 20 educational classes. So we've got 5 or 6 whole food plant-based doctors who talk about heart disease, diabetes, obesity. We have one that's a yoga expert and meditation expert. So as an organization, we are thriving, we are doing well. And I just wanted to kind of give you a better introduction of who we are and who I am. So I think that's kind of my story. It doesn't have to be a long one, it just has to be a good one. All right? Are there any questions that maybe, Betsy, you could come on up and maybe I could answer any questions you have. But before I get into the questions, I'll get you first because I have a question for you. And if some of you could raise your hand, I'd like to have a discussion with you. It's something I've been doing recently at the small groups, and that is, how many people here know somebody who's got heart disease, diabetes, or is morbidly obese? Raise your hands, please. Okay. It's not unusual. I just did that talk at U of M Med School, 1,000 young first and second year medical students. Everyone raised their hand. Everyone. It's still shocking to me. So my question is, how many people here are whole food, plant-based, perfect, who do not take on meat, dairy, and oil?
Perfect meaning.
When I say perfect, I'm saying, hey, listen, I love pizza. I know personally I could take a bite of pizza. By the way, my favorite pizza in the day was double cheese, double meat. What are you doing me for? I loved it. All right? But my point is, I know, okay, so here's my big mea culpa to everybody. 9 months ago, when I got really, really sick, my 3 sons and my 2 cousins I'm very close to, and I said to them, I'm going to make dinner every Thursday night, and I just want you to come join me for dinner. I'll make a plant-based dinner for you guys. I didn't think they were going to take me up on it. I've been cooking Thursday night dinners for the last 6 years, loving every minute. But I started realizing that as soon as dinner's over, a couple leave, and the rest are on their phone. Can you relate?
Yeah.
That's all good. I'm glad they show up. My point here is that I started realizing more and more that what is holding people back? Oh, my mea culpa. I was hoping you guys would forget it. So they bring food with them occasionally. So one of them brought Hershey Kissies with them. Now, I will admit to everybody that was my go-to chocolate because you could have a lot of them. So when no one was looking, I grabbed 10 of them. I put them all in my mouth at the same time. And I just let it melt. And I want to tell you, for 3.5 minutes, I was so happy. That evening, for 3.5 hours, I was doubled over in pain. A microbiome in my stomach wasn't used to this.
Or was it the foil?
Well, in the end, I knew it wasn't the foil. That's a good one, huh? All right.
Write that down.
Yeah, I got it right there. My point here is that when I ask you whole food, plant-based, perfect, when I say perfect, I mean, hey, I had one bad day in 7 years. I now admitted it to everybody. My point here is when I ask you how many are whole food, plant-based, really, really, really good, rarely have any, no meat, no dairy, no oil. How many people are like that? Well, I commend all of you. I really do. So my question is to the other people. What holds you back? I'm always curious because when I was going to the assembly plants, I met this one gentleman and he said, I'm a type 2 diabetic. You can see I'm 100 pounds overweight. I take a shot every day. I'm 55. I try to grab every hour I can, and I know I won't live for 10 more years. Because I can't give this up. I can't give this up. And I looked at him, and I could say what I wanted. I said, if I had a gun to your head, and I said, if you don't give up meat today, you're done. He said, well, I guess I would be able to give it up. I said, well, in essence, that's what's happening. You are killing yourself, but you have the ability to make a change. So I ask if anyone who's really struggling to give something up, if you could maybe share what holds you back? Is it peer pressure? Is it laziness? Is it, you go out to dinner and you just like going out? What holds you back? Is anybody willing to kind of share that with me? Yes.
I have teenagers that cook for themselves, so I feel like I have to buy stuff for them that they can use, like eggs, and then they're cooking and it smells so good, and I eat it too.
Okay, and it's interesting because this is where I could kind of freestyle a little bit. You're a parent, right? Okay. You're the parent. Okay. You're the parent, right? I mean, really, it's interesting. I've got grandkids, and Kelvin looks at me every time. I ain't eating this food. I said, then you're not eating. You're going to learn to eat some of these. Instead of having macaroni and cheese like you're being fed in other places, we're going to feed you a really nice dish of, go ahead, fill it in, a pasta with this, a vegetable with that. And, hey, listen, I grew up where my mom used to say to me, I got all night. You're not leaving until that plate is done. I didn't like Leisure peas. I hated them. And I used to learn that I'm going to eat them cold or warm, one way or the other. I'm going to eat them. All right? So I have the patience. When Calvin says, I'm not going to eat this, I said, well, we got all night, buddy. And guess what? He knows when he comes over, he's going to eat a healthy meal. It's difficult. It is. But when I share with everybody it's a lifestyle change, I can't believe on Sundays I spend 2-3 hours cooking. I batch cook, okay? So whatever I make huge amounts of it. And my way to finally get myself around it is I've been doing intermittent fasting for a couple of years, which has really been wonderful. I drink a lot of water, half my weight in water every morning. That's a pretty good way to look at it. It's a lot of water. But I also would say is try to create 5 to 7 meals that you'll like. And just keep repeating them. It's just food. I know I don't want to minimize it because I used to love the food, but the fact is, what I get out of this is, now here's the drum roll, my cholesterol today is 82. I weigh 164 pounds from 225.
Wow.
I feel great. I work out every day. I'm never sore. And I do crazy workouts. I've been doing hot vinyasa yoga for 2.5 years. I go bike riding when I'm done. Or on the weightlifting days, I'm the pull-up king. I could do a lot of pull-ups and sit-ups. I love it. And the thing I like about it, and that is not the vanity part, I don't care about that, but it's more of, I could do it every day. I'm never sore. So the challenge for anybody is to become whole food, plant-based, the best you can. And then you could judge, is it worth it? Is it worth feeling this good? There's just too many people who get to be 55 and older and start suffering. And it shouldn't be, it doesn't have to be, sorry about that. It shouldn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. You should be enjoying yourself because of your health. Anybody else on challenges? Yes, back there, yes.
I've been plant-based now for 12 years, and I never get sick. I do oil because I do this for animal rights. Okay, so olive oil isn't mistreated, I don't think. But anyway, so nobody's ever explained to me why oil is detrimental, like olive oil. It's not, I have low cholesterol.
I'll give you the answer you've been waiting for.
First of all, one thing I want to say, thanks for everyone sharing, is one thing I also hear you saying is when it's in front of you, it's harder. And I think that's one of the incredibly important things is understanding your why. And the why is different for everyone in this room. You just shared, for you, it started with animals. Some people start with environment, and a lot of people like you, it started with some devastating health, consequence. And hopefully younger people is to avoid that. So hopefully a really, really strong why helps when it's in front of you to be able to, avoid that or come up with something else. Because I know that's probably the hardest obstacle for most people is when it's already in front of you. But about the oil, I could talk about that for a long time. And as a matter of fact, actually, last year we did have a talk about fats, nuts, and oils and went into the details of that. But to keep it a little bit basic, one thing I can say is I don't know if you guys, if we're talking about this with whole foods, right? So we're talking about real foods that are closer to their original source. So the example, real basic example is that I always use is an Oreo, because an Oreo is technically, if you want to call it plant-based, sure, but it's vegan. There's no animal products in it. But can you describe what's in an Oreo? Anybody? Anyone have an ingredient that's in an Oreo? Yeah, we don't know, right? Well, sugar. Sure, there's maybe some sugar. There's a lot of like black crunchy stuff, and then maybe some white stuff that's creamy, but there's clearly no cream in it because there's no animal products in it. So that's the opposite of an actual whole food, right? An Oreo is highly processed. You can't identify the original source. So oils actually are highly processed things. So oil is extracted. So like olive oil, for example, olive is the original source, and olives happen to be really high in fat, and then the way you process them, they're actually really salty. So if you went on like a high olive diet, you would actually also have some health consequences. So then if we take the oil out and we extract it out, that's just very highly processed. So it's not a whole food. I'll just start there. Does that make sense, that piece? So that's a real simple way to start, is it's not a whole food, it's highly processed. It's incredibly high in calories because of that. You're taking all the calories and concentrating it down. And then also medically, the oil itself directly damages your vessel cell walls, a word called endothelium. So that also contributes to high blood pressure. So it's highly processed, very high in calories, and directly damages your vessels.
Let me also help you with that, though. Alternatives. So I admitted to everybody that I used to love the olive oil being dipped in with the spices and the bread. So the question is, okay, I'm going to give up oil. So what am I going to use? So here we go. Everyone got a pencil? Ready? I would like you to consider stirring faster with water. Use water. Stir. Yeah. Use vegetable broth. Then, for me, it was any dish that I make onions. I need onions. I just put them on really low, let them kind of sweat out, which almost feels like oil. I don't need it. What's cool about it too is I liked olive oil because everything I would put with olive oil tasted like olive oil. Now it tastes like what it's supposed to taste like. So try those things. I could also add, it's 125 calories a tablespoon. So anybody here who's trying to tighten up, you got to watch yourself. Plus, you got to label read. That was something we did very early on, was teach a lot of people to look at exactly what you're putting in. You assume, well, it says low sodium or this or that, but when you realize there's a lot of different names for oils, there's no good oil. But that was a good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Let's say all your life you've been eating butter and, you've only been vegan for like, say, 10 years. Is there a way to reverse the plaque in your arteries? I mean, is there, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting.
To reverse, let's say, how do you know if there's too much plaque in your arteries?
Well, I mean, you would have to, the only true way to know where you are and where you sit is through a heart catheter, right? You could get indications with tests, but to answer the reversal part, I can only say, well, let me say this. If you go whole food plant-based, it's going to improve. The only way to know where you were is to have a heart catheter. The only way to find out, like, for example, there's only one person on this planet who could convince me to get another heart catheter. There's still a risk with having a heart catheter. 3 to 5% that you could die on the table. If my cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic said, Paul, it's been 7 years, I want to see if you were able to reverse your heart disease, I had 100% blocked. It's always going to be blocked. It will never change. But I had 2 at 65%. So being whole food plant-based, he's curious, hey, has it reversed? If he asks me, he's the only one I'll do it for. Otherwise, I could say this much, I feel great. So I don't need to go get a test to know if it's reversed. The fact is, I bike ride 40 miles every couple days when the weather's right, and I'm 61 years old. It feels pretty good. I'm not sore the next day. So maybe that is helpful to you. Is there something you want to add to it?
Paul was right, for sure. What I would say to answer your question, unfortunately, is not black and white, is yes and no. There are some studies that prove that you can reverse the plaques a little bit, but medically, like, a plaque is calcified, which is the longer it's been there, the more permanent it is. So some people have been able to reverse some. And all that I'm speaking about right now is directly from Dr. Esselstyn. So this is definitely in his books and his talks. So there is some that can be reversed, but the large majority of people don't actually reverse the plaque. They reverse the ongoing damage, and then that does allow all of the vessel around the plaque, because the plaque can be a very finite area. All the vessel around it can then heal and operate normally. So truly, vessels get hardened, calcified plaques, and they can't work as well. And vessels are supposed to be very healthy, pliable things that can dilate and come back together and be very mobile. But the harder they get with animal products, they can't move anymore, and they can't dilate, and they can't give you a lower blood pressure. So you can reverse some, but most people don't reverse the plaque. They reverse everything else that's going on in their body and allow the symptoms to go away and the ongoing damage. What do you say?
I know a vegan who
Mm-hmm.
a long time and
Yeah.
an angiogram because
Yeah.
they're on their way to a heart attack. So
Yeah.
is this plaque thing could be hereditary, or just like, how could you be vegan and then
Well, if I'm going to be real honest and frank with you, probably because they eat oil. That's how. The vegans who eat processed foods and oils, that's how they have heart disease. Unfortunately, near and dear to my heart, my stepfather had a horrible, horrible heart attack, and he was vegan for 20 years. So, you can eat Oreo and be vegan. But yeah. And then the other thing is exercise. Sorry, you were just talking about reversing things. Exercise is important. You don't have to be an extreme athlete, but you were talking about the collaterals that you had before he even changed his diet. The collaterals he had was saving his heart tissue. So exercise is incredibly helpful to the repair of damaged vessels.
Let me add a few things to
Yeah.
that. We're going to have
And
some
then
fun.
we'll
So
see
we've got what time? We have time,
plenty
right?
of time.
Oh, good. Let's take our time then. Okay. Let me add a few things. That first of all, I want you to know my relationship with Betsy. When we first started, she lived up in Michigan. She was our first director of small groups. I've only cried a few times in my life. One tear was for her when she said she's coming to Cincinnati. But after seeing her, it's been a while, after seeing her, how happy she is here and how she is supposed to be here to help you and to be up next to me to answer questions, I just couldn't be more proud of you, and I do miss you. But she's at the right place. So I'm just letting you know that I have a long-standing relationship with Betsy. So you guys are so lucky to have her, let me tell you. All right. And then the other thing is that I used to think that it was all about you work out and then, like equal parts of working out, stress, sleep, nutrition. I was wrong. The way I look at it, it's like 70% what you put in your mouth, and then take that 10% and dole it between stress, sleep, and exercise. All right. So what do you have control of? You got control of what you put in your mouth. And again, I think my takeaway is, when I leave today, I want to share with you, give it 60 to 90 days. Challenge yourself. You could do anything, but go whole food, plant-based. And if you're going to do it, go to your doctor and get a lipid panel done. So you'll have a full workout and know exactly where you stand. Don't go 9 days, 7 days, 21 days, because it doesn't last. You go 60 to 90 days, you'll lose the weight, your numbers will drop, and then your beautiful thing happens at about the 2 to 3 week time frame. Your taste buds change. So all those vegetables I swore I'd never eat, I don't mind them. They're not so bad. Okay? But try it, because then after 60 or 90 days, now you have a basis for comparison. You'll look at how you feel. You'll look at your numbers. Then you'll ask yourself, well, I miss my steak and I miss my oil and I miss my cheese. Oh, I miss it so much. I'm going to go back to eating that way. Well, at least you were healthy. You had a basis to try something, and you know. But I have not yet met anybody who's gone 60 to 90 days and just said, you know what? This health stuff's overrated. I'm going to just be unhealthy. You got to see how it feels. And I'm telling you personally, and I'm speaking for all of you here, I'm just kidding. It feels great. And that's how you should feel. Life's tough enough. We all got kids, right? Life's tough enough. But to feel good every single day is such a blessing. Okay. Yes.
2 more questions.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Comment on intermittent fasting and also on dry fasting.
If you know something about dry fasting, I don't. But intermittent fasting is just simply, that's been like True North does that if you go out there. But I do what I call the Paul Chatlin intermittent fasting, which is, first of all, I mentioned to you, you should drink half your weight in water. So I wake up in the morning, and I used to drink like cold water, but for me, I was just having a tough time consuming a gallon and a half of water that's cold. So I make it warm temperature, and for the first couple hours, and I wake up like really early, I just drink my water, and then I go to the gym and work out. And I realize that there's a difference between hunger, really feeling hungry, and starving. And I realized there was too many times in my life I would either eat just to eat because I saw it around me, or I was kind of hungry, but I wasn't really hungry. And now, because I'm so aware of what I eat, I only eat when I consider myself really hungry. So I generally do not eat until 2, 3 o'clock every day. I'm not starving. You know what I'm saying? I'm not. I've got a lot of water in me. I've done my exercise for the day. I'm amped up. I feel good. About 2, 3 o'clock, I'll have my first meal. What's my first meal? I have this bowl that's so big, and I make kale arugula. Oh, I've got a recipe for you. Here we go. So I take all my greens, minus romaine, minus iceberg. Never use it. I put them all together, and then I take half of a lime, and I squeeze it around with a little bit of pepper, and I massage it with my hands, and I eat it. And I love it. I have it every day, 5 days a week, and the other 2 I'll have broccoli and cauliflower. That's my first meal every day. Again, it's what's good for me. I don't value food the way I used to. And then I have my 5 favorite meals. The person who's working on the restaurants, good for you. Mm-hmm. I think everyone should take that initiative. We have quite a few in Michigan. Pretty simple. I've got 5 by my house. So I'm good. I literally will go to them if I don't feel like cooking and have them make enough for the week sometimes. But you go into a restaurant, you look at the menu, you say, hey, here's all the things that I could have. Create something. I commend you. I find that to be something that even up in Michigan, that we don't expand more. But I always give that restaurant 24 hours notice that we're coming, and I would encourage everybody here to find as many as you can. It's funny, we met earlier, and I said most of our restaurants aren't as bright as this. You know, it's a little bit dingier place. Those seem to be our restaurants. But there's a lot of great restaurants that could be your restaurants. I've got a sushi restaurant that's whole food plant-based. I've got a Indonesian restaurant. I've got a Mediterranean restaurant, an Ethiopian one, and an American one, all within 5 miles of my house. So, yes. Any other questions? Yes.
I was going to ask you, do you take vitamin B12?
Yes. I take a vitamin D once a week, a vitamin B, one for, is it D or B with lack of the sun? D. So because up in Michigan, you know, it's the third cloudiest state, I'll take a vitamin D. I take a B12. I make sure to have my flax meal every other day, a big spoon. You know, I used to put on my oatmeal in the morning, but I don't have oatmeal in the morning, so I just take that with water. Doesn't taste like that. You put it in your mouth a couple times, you're good. You could swallow it. But that's all I take. Okay? That's all I take, and I don't have any bad issues at all, except I did come down with anemia the last time I had it. So I'm like, okay, doc, I got anemia. That's kind of weird. What should I do? And he says, eat oranges. So guess what I did? I started eating like 3 a day. It's gone away. I used to have like a little tingling in my toes and my hands in the morning. I'm like, wow, something's wrong. Anemic. So I started eating oranges. Don't have it anymore. It's amazing, isn't it?
Is
All right.
anemia iron?
Yeah.
Low iron?
Yeah.
You get that in the oranges?
So vitamin C is in
yeah.
oranges that combines with the iron to help you absorb it better.
Yeah.
So. And sorry to comment on just that, I don't know dry fasting. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
And my basics on fasting is there's definitely, it can be safe and it can be helpful and it's not necessary, but it can be safe and it can be helpful
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
Hey, can you tell me what dry fasting is? I'm kind of curious.
There's a guy named Ray Moore, and he has no food, no water.
That sounds.
Well, you know what's interesting? You go to True North, and they do, basically, you have water for how many days was it?
Well,
Like,
it depends. She went too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've done
it
that.
depends.
yeah, I'm saying that, I mean, I
But
get
it's
it all.
medically supervised.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're
Yeah,
you're in a bubble.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that just, like I said, that's exactly what I was gonna say, is that if you're gonna go that route, would you say dry fasting, make sure your doctor's holding your hand with that. For me, it was just a matter of being more aware of the difference between eating, being hungry, really being hungry. And it just works for me. You know, I have about a 6-hour window every day that I eat, and I don't go outside of it because I feel really good every day. I want to keep this up. Why not? I'm 61. I could probably go for another 20 years, 25. Why not? Okay. I sure beat my body up for a long time.
Okay,
So,
another question.
yes, sir.
So you described one of your meals. Give me what are the other 4?
Oh, well, I will say this. Okay, so here's what I like to do, okay, for me. My fallback to anything is I will have oatmeal, okay? Because it's just, I mean, how can you not like oatmeal? But I put a secret spice in my oatmeal. I combine pumpkin spice with oatmeal spice. I'm sorry, with apple pie. Okay, so it's pumpkin, nutmeg, cinnamon, apple pie. Put them all together, and it just brightens everything up. And I use soy milk. You could use any of the nut milks. I like soy just because it's bland. I don't like the almond. That's just me. Anybody who's having a 1% milk, 0.5%, I challenge you today. Go buy oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, bless you, and do a blind taste test. That's what I did. I wasn't sure which one I liked. Soy milk seemed to be okay for me. The other meal that I have regularly is I take every vegetable I've ever enjoyed, I cut it in little pieces, and then I add whole wheat noodles to it, and put a bunch of spices on it, and 1 tablespoon of Bragg's amino. I can have that 4 or 5 days a week. Okay? If I had more time, which I don't have, I would create some more meals. What's interesting, I was telling Betsy today that I do miss pizza. That was my go-to food growing up. You know, I was wacko because I would spend the summer going, you know, if a restaurant said best pizza in the world, boom, they got me the next day. You know, I went through that with steak and I went through that with pizza. So what a waste of time. The biggest waste of time was I bought an infrared grill 2 days before my heart disease really hit me. I had one steak on it, and it's never been used since. It's my reminder of my life. My point is that I go to the restaurant sometimes and say, you know, give me enough for a week's time. But there's so many good recipes out there. If I had time, I'd be knocking some of those down. A great place that I would highly recommend everybody go to is pbnsg.org's recipe list. We've got 400 or 500 recipes. We got a section of $5, 5 minutes, 5 ingredients, and then 10, 10, and 10. But we've got 26 chefs from all over the world contributing. So check it out, please. But again, the challenge is just finding repeatable, easy to make meals. Yes?
I like to hear your comments. Do you ever make a smoothie, and do you use any kind of a protein powder?
The answer is no and no. Okay, and the reason is that when you take the fruit or vegetables, we'll go with the fruit, and to make it a smoothie, you're taking it into a high-speed blender, and you're getting rid of the thing that makes it so wonderful, which is a fiber, and you're creating, in essence, sugar from it with these high-speed blenders. And the answer is anything I could put powdery in me, I could take naturally, and I don't do smoothies, even though they taste good. The fact is that I just will eat the fruit.
I agree.
All right, any other questions about what holds you back? Yes? Okay, any other questions? I'm sorry.
You left this 4 months, 16 hours a day in bed, and you didn't finish. You didn't tell us how you got out of bed and what happened next.
Well, it was just, I just would sit there for 4 months, and they put me on crazy pills because they wanted to shrink the heart and then have the valves stop bleeding. So the only way to do it is through bed rest. So I would be on these pills that would knock me out for 16 hours a day, and I'd get up and then I would start making food. I would go back 7 years ago, there were only a handful of cookbooks. But I would try anything that looked okay. I would just spend the next 8 hours trying to create some of it. And like I said, there were moments I'd sit there and say, I'm not enjoying my life. So I started PBNSG idea so I could meet like-minded people. That was so important to me because I knew I couldn't be the only one, even though I felt like I was the only one. To tell you how bad it got for me, does anybody remember the interview that Sanjay Gupta had with Bill Clinton? Okay, do you remember that? You look it up. I mean, it was Bill admitting that he's now vegan or plant-based, all right, saved his life. I didn't care about listening to that. What I cared about was they talked about a lady, her name is Sharon Kids, from Canton, Ohio. And they took her, dropped her in Manhattan and said, okay, 7 years ago, find something plant-based. So she'd walk around and she'd find a bunch of salad places. But what she meant to me was, she was the first person who was real enough, so I started calling all the Sharon Kids in Ohio. I had 8 hours a day to entertain myself. She called me back, and you know, to this day, her and I are dear friends. Yeah, I mean it. And in fact, she's got a group in Canton that's going to be joining us, the PBNSG group, as we expand. But I'm just saying that it was more of just where I was back then. And here we are today. I got all you people as my new friends, and we got 6,800 people in Michigan throughout. And I realized that, you know, we're trying to connect with people. We're holding people somewhat accountable to improve their health. And we're trying to explain how to improve their health too. Yeah, any other questions? Yes?
You mentioned you had that big salad, right? It was salad in the afternoon, and I thought I heard you say you put kale in.
Kale, arugula, Swiss chard, spinach, spring mix occasionally. No iceberg, no romaine.
So the reason I asked you is because I read a lot about that you shouldn't eat kale raw. And you're eating it raw, but you said you were massaging it. And I was just wondering whether that was doing.
Well, it's kind of cool. I'm glad you brought that up because in my early days I would steam the kale, but then if I wasn't like watching it, it'd go really limp and didn't really like it. Then I started having it raw, but raw kale really just didn't taste that good. But once you put the lemon or the lime on, not lemon, lime, and then just take a few minutes to play with it, all of a sudden it tastes sweet. There you have it. Now arugula, doesn't matter how much I massage it, it's got a unique taste. But again, I don't put it all, it's like a lot of kale, a lot of spinach, a lot of Swiss chard, a little bit of collard once in a while, a little bit of arugula, because but just putting a little bit of pepper and lime, tastes great. Yes.
I have to ask this because you know I have this one. So, aren't you worried about your protein? Because as you get older and you work out, your muscles need protein. I want to know.
Well, I don't know, I'm looking pretty good, I mean, I'm pretty solid.
I did this I
Yeah.
did this a lot to me. Like, how do you get your protein? Oh my gosh, you're not getting enough protein to make the muscles.
Well, I am laughing, okay?
Do you know what muscle cells run on? They run on glucose, actually.
Right.
Muscle cells don't get bigger because you eat protein. Muscle cells get bigger because you use them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's a good example. So, using your muscles is how you get stronger. People ask you about your protein. It's a hard one for all of us to answer, and I don't feel like it usually is fruitful to even really engage that unless the person has a good relationship with you and you really want to dive into it. But it's just an uneducated kind of, or uninformed is a better way question to be asked of you. And it's perpetuated by the food industry.
Yeah,
so
think
one
about
of
the
the
marketing.
highest,
Milk, it does a body good.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't, right?
One of the highest selling markets in the food industry in the past 10 years, well, I would say 5 years ago, now there's newer things, but was putting protein in the high protein in front of the box. And they could do that by just adding soy protein isolate to any food, like even grape nuts, which used to be something that was unadulterated, if you will, and now it's not. But if they put high protein in the front, it'd sell faster. So it's just perpetuated by.
I have to get some kind of protein shake because I get too hungry on just greens and fruit.
Yeah, you do. So you have to eat starches. So you have to eat potatoes, rice, really whole grain breads, if that's okay with you. So you do get too hungry if you just eat greens. That's very true. You have to have
There's no
things.
limit. You know what I'm saying? Like when people say, well, I'm hungry, eat more. You know what I'm saying? You eat more greens, have some more, have another serving of fruit.
And the things, the broccoli and cauliflower,
Yeah.
that's gonna fill you up a lot more. So you're being really honest, and I love that because I want everyone to hear that. Because people think they have to eat salad. Now he is right in what he's explaining, and he also is very intensely focused on his greens because of his heart disease, which is true and important and would never hurt anyone in this room. So if you did everything you did with Paul, you would never get heart disease. But what I want you to know is if you ate only kale, first of all, keep eating it, that's fine too, but you won't fill up as fast because it is smaller by nature. And that's where you have to kind of get into some things if you've ever learned or read about things we call calorie density. So the calories of kale is actually low. So you need to have other things that will fill it up. That's why he's talking about this huge bowl. He's talking huge because he has to get all the calories. But broccoli and cauliflower are other really, really good green type vegetables that will fill you up more, as well as any legumes, beans, oatmeal, whole grains.
Do you eat beans like?
Oh yeah, I mean I like beans a lot. And I was always worried about like, hey, beans, what's it going to do to me? You start eating them regularly, it's just going to fill you up. You're going to love it, right? And there's so many choices. You can find a bean that you like. And like I play around with a lot of different beans, but one thing I do a lot is when I'm traveling, I do two things. One is I take garbanzo beans, I put them in, and I literally put a bunch of cool spices, whatever you enjoy, put them in the oven and get them almost like where they're crunchy. Tastes really good, okay? I also do the same with potatoes, little potatoes. They're great for traveling, okay? But if you're hungry, have some potatoes, have some rice, have some beans, have some broccoli, and that will fill you up. It's making the right food choices.
Do you have a favorite bread that you like? Are you gluten-free?
No, I have to admit, I'm spoiled. I am totally spoiled. My neighbor is from India. One on one side's from southern, one's from northern, and they're plant-based, and they're always they're always cooking for they cook for me. I love them for that. I've been neighbors in my courtyard for 30 years with all the same neighbors. When they said, "Hey, if we all just stay here, will everyone just stay here and never move?" I thought they were kidding. They aren't, and I'll hang with them, but they're just great neighbors. One of them taught me how to make like a pita bread, which is whole wheat and water. Now, I don't have the time like I used to do it, but my neighbor has the time. So she gets paid to make me a stack of really tasty, spicy, good pita bread. You could go to an Indian restaurant and ask them to make aloo paratha, and they should be able to make it if you give them enough time without the oil. And I have a place that I go to that I will go and call a week ahead of time saying, I need 50 to go. So that, and then, you know what, if you go on our website, I just found a cool butter recipe that uses cauliflower. And remember, I'm a Land O'Lakes butter guy, okay? So I know about butter. But this didn't taste like butter, but it had the consistency of butter. And I've got it on our Facebook and our recipes. So go onto the website and look up PB butter or something, you'll find it. Or give me a shout and I've got it on my refrigerator, I'll send it to you, okay? But what I like is I take that with my Ezekiel bread now, and I just, put a little butter on it. It tastes really good. And now I can make it with my tofu scramble. Yeah, it uses, here's the key ingredient. It's really expensive out there. Psyllium husk. All right, so.
To give it the right texture.
Yeah,
So what does
it's
it
called
taste like?
psyllium. It tastes like butter.
It does?
But it's not, it's got that, because you can use turmeric, so it's going to have a little bit of a yellow look to it. It's got the consistency and the spread of butter, but it doesn't taste like that dairy butter, but it's similar.
Okay.
So what I did recently is, Whole Foods, they have Rip Esselstyn's got his Engine 2 pizza dough. That's whole wheat. So I take that, I kind of put the little butter on top of it, and I spoil myself once in a while.
What's the website to get that recipe?
pbnsg.org.
Plant-based nutrition support group. That's where it came from, if that will help.
Yeah,
you
and
remember
what's
as
so
well.
funny about it, remember we used to have it where our URL was Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group.
Yeah.
And people would complain and complain. We liked it because I thought, everyone's complaining.
Yeah.
But then I had to shorten it up and call it
Thanks for
PBNG.
coming, guys.
Thank
And
you.
Speaking of, let's take 2 more questions and then we'll
Yeah.
break. We'll end
Yeah.
if you'll come mill. Let's
Yes.
go over here. Sorry, one second, you just had a lot. So let's go over here.
Thanks, yeah, your original question to us kind of got me thinking. I would consider myself wholly plant-based and oil. However, every once in a while, like I'm tempted, I'm like, oh, why, besides my health numbers, why do I, and environmental for me, but why do I do this? And the hardest time for me to stick to it is at large family gatherings with the community piece and the food. I find it can be very isolating, but on the flip side, I can be very judgmental. Like, for example, our Halloween gathering, this past week, and just seeing people. So, like, do you guys have any advice about how to navigate that?
It's a toughie, isn't it? I mean, that's a great question. And I can just say personally, listen, I got, my wife's got a big family. So every time we have a get together and you don't miss a holiday, I'm sitting here, just like 2 weeks ago, 80th birthday party, and they had it at a bar. And the host comes up and says, oh, I was so worried about all this going on, I forgot to think of you. I said, well, that's no problem. Just give me some carrots and some tomatoes and some cucumbers, and I'm good. But then everyone says, what are you doing? Like, they can't believe I'm eating this stuff. So I look at it as an opportunity to do some explaining and educating of people without judging. That's the one thing I'm so proud of, is I'm really not a judgmental person. Thank you for the yoga classes. But my point is, it gives me the opportunity to explain things to people. but it's not difficult for me. It's difficult for everyone around me. And my attitude on that is opportunity for people to learn. And hopefully they'll walk away with something that might help them get healthier.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna remember.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's actually a really good one to end on if you think that's okay. And if anyone has more questions, we'll be here.
Yeah.
We're not going to leave, we're going to be here and hanging out, and people can mail. But first of all, I want to say you're not alone. And so I want to tell some stories of what I just experienced this weekend with my in-laws in town, whom I love dearly, and they're kind and sweet people, but coming into my own house, and they clearly know who I am and how I live and what's important to me, but still making it awkward and isolating, and having someone up in my face like this looking at my plate. Well, what's in there? It was Chipotle. Okay, it was not weird or strange or a different ethnicity that was strange for them. It was literally Chipotle. Okay, I didn't put the chicken or the cheese on it, but I had everything else that's in Chipotle. So you're not alone. This happens. So part of it is, of course, if there's an opportunity to walk through the door, walk through the door. And I say that sometimes, like, if there's an opportunity, door opens and someone's really curious, sure, engage if the relationship's there. But a lot of it, it's just trying to make the best out of it. What I do in those events is just ensure that I've got something I know I can eat. Obviously, the best then is a potluck, because if it's a potluck, you can feel very normal walking in with a dish and knowing that you have at least one really safe thing. And of course, I try to do as normal as I can. People think I eat salads only. So in public, I more often bring things that aren't salads, because then they think I'll eat salads and they think they're never going to do it. They can never do something like that. So I will bring more rice dishes, bean dishes, potato dishes, things that are a little bit more normalized for them. Then they see Betsy eating potatoes and, oh, okay, she's not this little bird who only eats salads. So I try to do some of things like that. But this is why this exists, and this is why what I'm going to end on, if that's okay. Do you have anything else you want to say? Okay. This is why this room of people exists, is because this is hard. And this is why I'm here too. I'm a part of this. We are not the majority. I dream for a day that we will be. But to Paul's credit, the reason their group name, I know it's long and it sounds funny with all the letters, but it's a plant-based nutrition support group for a reason. And, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is weird to be talking about in this room, but it's the only proven way for someone who's an alcoholic to actually stay sober, is to have people around them, to have regular check-ins of people that help support what they're doing and remind them that what they're doing, remind them of their why and what they're doing is important, and that they're supported in those lifestyle decisions that they're making. And so although I know, you got a hard time for that long name, the long name is because it has a meaning, and this is for support for you to be able to keep doing what you're doing and know that you are choosing the healthiest thing for you so that you can live the longest, best, most vibrant, happy life that you possibly can. So we want you guys all to keep coming. We're really excited about the future things. Julie is the mastermind behind organizing and dreaming and really leading this group, but we're really excited about down the road having restaurants that we can go to, and we could go to that restaurant and say, hey, you don't have to make your whole menu plant-based or your whole menu oil-free, but can you just provide us a few things? If you do, we'd love to come to your restaurant and have a night out, So we're excited about that. We're excited about small groups that are coming in, times where we can be in each other's homes and be in a smaller amount of people, to have more support, and to maybe have more potlucks and cooking with each other and things like that. So then the last thing I do want to say is I want to say thank you to you. I know you talked about getting teary, but when I heard that he was going to come down, I was in my car and I didn't tell you this, but I got really teary because it's really hard what we do in the health profession. And people judge us a lot from the nutrition world of, why don't doctors offer this? And the reason is because you're not the majority. But you remind me and you inspire me that people do want change, and that some people will do it and they'll radically change your life. And it's amazing what you've done.
I guess you would be upset if I said to you that there was a moment that if I had ultimate money, it'd be Paul Chatlin class action suit to all doctors in the hospital.
Which is okay.
That was what I wanted to do, because I find that I find not every doctor, clearly.
Right.
But we created a medical course material. We've been at Wayne State Medical School multiple times to try and just add, not replace a curriculum, but just add to the curriculum. It's the minority. We are still so the minority. And yet, we go to our doctors and we expect them to heal us. And when a doctor says, well, they didn't teach it in school, I'm like, are you kidding me? What is your head in the ground? I mean, don't you read anything that could help your patients? I mean, really, you guys, I look at it like a priest, rabbi, like somebody who, you know, they earn the money, they worked hard. I got to really understand in creating the medical course material just how tough it is to be a doctor. It is, you know, these people are brilliant, but the workload is incredible. But the responsibility to us is incredible. And it's something that is really, it does affect me, because I think every doctor should say to their patient, not, hey, how are your pills? Oh, we got 10 other ones we'll try. It should be, what do you eat? Just start with that. What do you eat? And maybe if you said to them, well, I do protein shakes and I do a lot of fried food. Well, how about if you just try this and that? Again, we are
We'll
the
dream.
minority.
We'll dream. No, and we've got a big problem in our country, in our insurance industry, and our pharmaceutical industry, and we're just going to go out there and do everything we can, one day at a time. And let's all start with an apple that's over there on the table and some water, because an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we're hanging for a bit. Oh, you want to? Can you send that to me?
Not the best camera in the world.
That's okay.